Welcome back, everyone, to the Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Summit. I hope you enjoyed the break. I apologize, I should have mentioned that the music would play first and then the balloon videos, but hopefully some of you got to see those videos at the end of the break. They are available if anyone wants to use them in other places. We're happy to share those. So if you're just joining us, we'll be spending the next 2 hours looking at two new regional initiatives that encompass the Mid-Atlantic from Virginia to New York, and then 3 new federal initiatives that encompass the nation. And we will have a Q&A panel after all 5 of our speakers have finished their presentations. So again, please be entering your questions into the Q&A box as they occur to you during each talk. So our next speaker will be Christy Kehoe. And Christy is the Mid-Atlantic Regional Coordinator for NOAA's Marine Debris Program, at least for a little while longer. We understand she's moving out west, and we're going to miss her sorely, but we're so glad she was able to stay with us through the summit. She's been amazing, an amazing partner, and we're going to miss her. But anyway, Christy is based in Silver Spring, Maryland, and she works there on the region's marine debris issues and oversees partner activities, stakeholder engagement, monitoring, response and outreach in the Mid-Atlantic states and the District of Columbia. And since 2016, Christy has focused on the development of regional marine debris action plans, supporting grants management as a certified program officer, strategic planning, initiating zero waste efforts, and leading the 6th International Marine Debris Conference. Some of you may have been to that big event. And prior to this, Christy worked in environmental conservation and supported the National Science Foundation and U.S. Agency for International Development. So welcome, Christy.
Thanks, Laura.
And hopefully your slides will come up. There they are. They look perfect.
Fantastic. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present at the 2021 Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Summit's regional and federal initiative sessions. My name is Christy Kehoe, and I support the NOAA Marine Debris Program as the Mid-Atlantic Regional Coordinator. And I've been fortunate enough to participate in the last summit in 2019, and I'm looking forward to this week's sessions and exciting conversations. So the NOAA Marine Debris Program's mission is to investigate and to prevent the adverse impacts of marine debris. You'll see the federal definition of marine debris listed here. But in short, it is any solid man-made material that is in the coastal, marine, or Great Lakes environment that should not be there. You'll be hearing more about the program in further detail from my director, Nancy Walsh, shortly in the federal initiative session. The Marine Debris Program works with partners around the country to address marine debris through our 6 main pillars: regional coordination, response, prevention, removal, research, as well as monitoring and detection. I'll be focusing the majority of my presentation today on the first pillar of regional coordination and focusing on the Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Action Plan, and then lightly touch base on our response pillar. So marine debris issues can be different around the United States, and that is why we have staff located in 10 different regions. Our staff provides regional expertise and coordinates with local partners on marine debris needs. We consider the Mid-Atlantic region to include Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. As a Mid-Atlantic Regional Coordinator, I work with grant management, outreach, stakeholder engagement, response, and monitoring efforts to support this region. Here is a map of the NOAA Marine Debris Program grants across the region, including our federal funded opportunities such as community-based marine debris removal, prevention, and research projects, as well as our other marine debris activities. You'll be hearing about some examples on these projects later this afternoon and throughout this week. And if you're interested to learn more about our funding opportunities, please visit the NOAA Marine Debris Program's website and sign up for our monthly newsletter. So additionally, under this regional coordination pillar, the Marine Debris Program facilitates action plans across the country. This is a community-driven approach, creating a shared framework to address marine debris specific to each region. In developing our regional action plans, we have noticed the importance and value of the action planning efforts. This includes, but is not limited to, increasing awareness on the issue and public education, bringing a diverse set of marine debris partners together, helping to bring funding and other resources to the region, and having a shared vision and a coordinated message. We facilitate this process by bringing together diverse stakeholders from all backgrounds who volunteered to lead and partner on specific actions. The community includes all stakeholders who have an interest in addressing marine debris and creating a shared solution in that region. This includes nonprofits, tribal groups, academia, private sector, fishers, crabbers, watermen, local, state, and federal agencies, regional bodies, and many more. As such, ownership of these action plans belong to the wider marine debris community. The Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Action Plan process has been ongoing for the past few years. At the Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Summit in 2019, we held a breakout session to collect insight on regional priorities. This information was a great step forward that was used to identify goals and opportunities for the action planning process. I want to share a little bit more about the planning process and our engagement approach that we took over the last year. So in lieu of in-person workshops, we reached out directly to organizations working on marine debris issues in the region and conducted individual one-on-one calls. We also analyzed other regional action plan data and reviewed data sources such as the Ocean Conservancy's International Coastal Cleanup Reports, the Marine Debris Tracker application, and other available data. We then synthesized this background research and stakeholder feedback to create a draft action plan. This was discussed at our 4 goal-based virtual workshops and subsequent partner review periods. We also worked closely with other planning efforts in the region, including the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan, led by the Virginia Coastal Management Program in collaboration with Clean Virginia Waterways of Longwood University, as well as the Long Island Sound Marine Debris Action Plan, led by Connecticut and New York Sea Grant offices to align our efforts. I'm very excited to share that the Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Action Plan was recently published in May 2021. This can be found on our NOAA Marine Debris Program's website. The action plan's vision is to keep the Mid-Atlantic region, coast, community, habitats, wildlife, and ocean free from the impacts of marine debris. Through our mission, this action plan works on a multifaceted approach with a timeline of 5 years running from 2021 through the end of 2026. The plan is divided into 4 goal areas based on the community's top identified priorities. These areas are consumer debris, derelict fishing gear, microplastics and microfibers, and abandoned and derelict vessels. The action plan is structured into a hierarchy of goals, strategies, objectives, and actions to be completed by partners and leads over the next 5 years. Each goal has the same 5 strategies of 1, prevention, education, and outreach, 2, research and monitoring, 3, proper disposal and infrastructure, 4, removal, and 5, policy and management. Here's an example of what the action plan looks like and the goal, strategy, and objective structure. Actions were identified using a SMART approach, which stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. In total, we have 54 actions with 94 partner organizations. As you can see by the action listed here, I am pleased by the overwhelming partner support. This is one action with 29 partner organizations, which highlights the collaborative nature of our action planning process. Here's also a snapshot of the organizations that are part of the Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Action Plan to date. Leads and partners are entities that have volunteered to carry out a specific action. They're responsible for supporting and undertaking actions and providing reporting on progress. I want to thank those organizations who have volunteered to be leads and partners on the action plan. If you are interested or haven't been involved to date, please reach out to us at any time. We are more than happy to look for opportunities to engage moving forward and would like to add more names to this growing list of regional partners. The NOAA Marine Debris Program also promotes information sharing on a variety of communication platforms. One of these resources is the Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Collaboration Portal that was created to better share information across the region. There's also a Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris newsletter that is published throughout the year about regional activities. You can learn more about the collaboration portal and sign up for a newsletter on our website. Additionally, the Marine Debris Program monitors the action plan on a biannual basis to ensure the plan remains successful and to share progress with our partners. We're hoping to hold a mid-year update in 2023 to discuss the action plan status, which will provide another opportunity for any interested organizations to engage with the plan. Again, please feel free to reach out and learn more about this initiative at any time. I wanted to briefly share another planning effort under our response pillar, as we are also in the Atlantic hurricane season. So following a storm or natural disaster, materials that were previously on land could be washed into the coastal zone and threaten navigation, making it difficult to reach people in need. The NOAA Marine Debris Program is not a response organization per se, but we do have the ability to provide support, coordination, and guidance during an emergency response. We also create and share emergency debris response guides that are state specific. These guides outline the existing response structures at the local, state, and federal levels, as well as lay out different types of common waterway debris after emergencies. To date, we have completed plans for Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware, and New Jersey to be published later this year. And we are currently talking with stakeholders in New York and moving forward with planning efforts there. Please visit the NOAA Marine Debris Program and NOAA websites to get information about the program, the Mid-Atlantic regional activities, and emergency response efforts. Before I close, I want to take this opportunity to highlight NOAA's Office for Coastal Management, who supported and funded this summit. For those that may not be familiar, the NOAA Office for Coastal Management and the Marine Debris Program work together to serve regional stakeholders to combat marine debris. This office oversees the Coastal Zone Enhancement Program implementation, which is part of the Coastal Zone Management Act. This act encourages state and territorial coastal management programs to conduct self-assessments on coastal resources, including marine debris. Virginia and Maryland use this self-assessment to rank marine debris as a high priority issue. Thank you again to my NOAA OCM colleagues for your work in the region and for funding this summit. Lastly, I want to thank all of you, the summit planners, again for the opportunity to present today on these efforts. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. And now I'll hand it back to Laura.
Thank you so much, Christy. I feel like we're going to miss you so badly. We don't want you to leave, but West Coast is going to be really lucky to get you and all your enthusiasm. So thank you for all you've done for us over the past few years. And we wish you well. And we're glad you're going to be with family.
Thank you. And thank you all for the opportunity again.
Great. Okay, so again, we're going to have save our questions for the end. And so be putting them in the Q&A box. And next up on regional initiatives, we're going to have Avalon Bristow, who is our program director for the Mid-Atlantic Regional Council on the Ocean. And Avalon serves also as staff on our regional marine debris work group, our right hand on all things there. So thank you, Avalon. A little background, Avalon, she leads to the development and execution of actions to achieve MARCO's priorities. And she is staff support not only to the marine debris work group, but several other collaborative work groups, and serves as primary point of contact for the MARCO Management Board for work group progress reports and strategic planning and fundraising support. And prior to joining MARCO, Avalon worked as program manager for the National Wildlife Federation's Mid-Atlantic office. So she knows our region well. And there she helped coordinate their coastal resilience and conservation education programs. And she has a deep love for the Mid-Atlantic region's wildlife and natural areas where she's lived her entire life. So with that, I will turn it off to you, Avalon, and note that we are actually 5 minutes or so ahead of schedule. So take your time, no need to rush. And thank you so much. And I'll let you know when we see your slides coming up. And hopefully the screen share will work. It looks like it's starting. There you are. Perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura. I really do appreciate this opportunity to speak about the great and collaborative work ongoing in the Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Working Group. First, I'll start with an overview of what the Mid-Atlantic Regional Council on the Ocean, or MARCO, actually is. MARCO was founded in 2009 as a regional ocean partnership of 5 states, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, and New York, to work toward enhancing the vitality of the region's ocean ecosystem and economy through collaboration and coordination. The Mid-Atlantic Committee on the Ocean, or MACO, is a committee that MARCO established in 2019 to foster collaboration among the 5 states relevant federal agencies, federally recognized tribes, and the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council, and also to engage stakeholders. You'll see that a theme throughout this presentation is the importance of partnerships. Partnerships with other entities like those I already listed, as well as the academic community and researchers, and the ocean observing system in the Mid-Atlantic, Maricus, and many more, are critical to advance the regional priorities, helping serve as a collective voice for the region. Our work groups are collaborative and have succeeded due to active engagement of everyone on the team. Truly a special thanks to our partners that are in attendance today. MARCO has established several topic-specific and multi-agency work groups to identify and pursue specific activities that advance 4 shared regional priorities, which are 1, to protect important marine habitat and sensitive and unique offshore areas. 2, support the sustainable development of offshore renewable energy. 3, prepare the region's coastal communities for the impacts of climate change on ocean and coastal resources. And 4, promote coastal and ocean water quality improvements. This 4th priority is where the Marine Debris Working Group sits. Its goal is to improve the quality of our coastal waterways and ocean through reduction and prevention of marine debris and litter that becomes marine debris. The multi-agency Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Work Group, as we've mentioned before, is led by our moderator, Laura McKay from the Virginia CCM program, as well as Maureen Krudner from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. There are over 24 members of the Mid-Atlantic Work Group who meet once per month to work on activities aimed at creating a regionally appropriate strategy for marine debris reduction. All 5 Mid-Atlantic states are represented in that group, as are federal agencies, NGOs and aquariums, and even some small businesses in the region. For calendar year 2021, the work group is focusing on 5 activities, which I'll be reviewing during this presentation. 1, developing a community-based social marketing campaign to change behavior resulting in marine debris reduction at the Mid-Atlantic regional scale, with an initial focus on reducing balloon releases. 2, conducting shoreline marine debris surveys and documenting the quantities and types of debris found. 3, supporting the creation of the Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Action Plan and contributing to that where appropriate. We just heard a lot about that from Christy Kehoe in her wonderful presentation, so I'm not going to say much more about that effort, but please do reach out to me if you have questions. 4, maintaining a marine debris projects inventory website. And 5, helping to plan and execute this summit. For more detail about these 5 activities or to learn more about our other work groups, please visit the ocean planning section of the MARCO website. There you can download the group's work plan and semi-annual progress reports. So as I mentioned, one of the work group's main priorities right now is to reduce balloon debris in the region. The genesis of this focus came from a workshop in Virginia in June 2017, where Mid-Atlantic marine debris experts were asked to consider which common marine debris item A, posed the greatest risk to marine wildlife and habitats, B, was the most politically and economically feasible to address, and C, could be addressed using a single strategy across the whole Mid-Atlantic. These experts identified balloons as a priority target and agreed that community-based social marketing was the best approach to help change behavior and prevent this harmful form of marine debris. Balloons are unique among all the man-made litter and debris in that they and their attachments, like plastic ribbons, plastic valves, plastic disc, are a form of litter that people purchase often with the intent to release them into the environment. That's something I really hadn't thought about before. Families, schools, businesses, and sports venues across the globe continue to purchase mass quantities of helium-filled latex balloons or foil-covered plastic balloons, often mistakenly referred to as Mylar, transfer them to a selected site, and then release them into the air. These releases of balloons have become part of various social and marketing events such as weddings, funerals, memorials, athletic events, birthdays, festivals, political rallies, you name it. As they rise, helium-filled balloons may or may not burst, but eventually all balloons and their attachments return to Earth as litter, landing in the ocean, inland water bodies, or on land. Once airborne, balloons can travel long distances and have an impact in an area far, far from the point of release. A balloon can travel hundreds of miles before bursting or deflating and landing in a forest, a field, river, lake, or ocean. They often end up floating into the world's oceans, washing up on beaches thousands of miles away. Once there, they become a truly deadly hazard to marine wildlife. In fact, balloons are among the top 5 most deadly forms of ocean trash. Because many of these airborne balloons, fragments, and attachments end up in the ocean, they can be mistaken as food by marine animals and therefore ingested. Their attachments, as we talked about, a string, ribbon, or other material, wrap around fins, flippers, and limbs, which can lead to starvation, infection, amputation, or drowning. Latex balloons can take years to degrade, long enough to pose entanglement and ingestion dangers to turtles, seabirds, and marine mammals. Scientists who work with stranded whales, dolphins, seals, and sea turtles have found balloons, parts of balloons, and balloon string in the stomachs of many of these dead animals. To address this serious and pervasive concern, the work group applied for and was granted funding from the NOAA Marine Debris Program to undertake this regional community-based social marketing approach to reduce balloon release behavior. This project builds off the great groundwork laid in Virginia through their Joyful Send-Off campaign, which aimed to reduce the number of balloon releases at celebratory events such as weddings. Community-based social marketing is a behavior change approach that was developed by Dr. Doug Mackenzie Moore that involves a lot of research and careful planning to promote sustainable behavior change. CBSM is founded upon the concept that if you want to change someone's behavior, you have to truly understand the behavior. So the project team has crafted an approach following CBSM principles, including with guidance directly from Dr. Mackenzie Moore, and has done a ton of research over the past 2 years to get a good sense of where and why people release balloons so that we ensure our campaign is meeting people where they are. For example, as I mentioned before, this project was founded upon some work in Virginia that was focused on wedding celebrations. As we conducted focus group research throughout the rest of the region during year 1 of this project, we found that only 7% of wedding venues in the entire region had a mass balloon release. While a few individual wedding venues did have a high number of releases, these focus group results indicated that a wedding venue-based strategy would be too narrow for the Mid-Atlantic region. Additional surveys indicated that most of the releases that are happening here are not actually happening at formal event spaces like churches or wedding venues, but rather at people's homes or during other informal settings. This information led the project team to utilize a social diffusion and norms as a key approach to new and broader audiences. Therefore, based on this need, we forged partnerships with aquariums in the region to help develop and widely disseminate a balloon release reduction message. Aquarium staff have joined our project planning team. They've become truly integral partners and critical partners in our effort. And we're working with them to develop materials for display in their exhibits, as well as additional downloadable resources for formal and informal educators. We anticipate distribution of these materials in the next few months. The research and results from this groundwork that we're laying right now truly provide fascinating insight into people's motivation for balloon release behavior. Steve Robbie from OpinionWorks has been an invaluable contributor to this project. He's been leading the focus groups and surveys and subsequent analysis to inform the campaign. He'll be talking about the results of this work on the last day of the summit. He's an incredibly engaging and informative speaker, and I encourage you to join that session to learn more about community-based social marketing. And I've listed the time and date there. Okay, if you were here during our break, you may have seen a snapshot of this beautiful website, preventballoonlitter.org, that our colleagues at Virginia CZM and Clean Virginia Waterways have developed to provide ideas for alternative ways to celebrate, remember, and honor without the use of balloon releases. I encourage you to visit this website. There are so many just gorgeous images of different things that people can do to celebrate and remember, and all the things I just listed without balloons. Is really a fantastic resource. In addition to the balloon release CBSM campaign, as part of our project funded by the NOAA Marine Debris Program, each state is conducting cleanup events on 1 mile stretches of beach at least biannually. During these cleanup events, they catalog the number of balloon and non-balloon related debris, and we keep track of those numbers. And very recently, we've been working with the MARCO portal technical team and the ocean mapping and data team to create a layer on the Mid-Atlantic Ocean Data Portal that shows the 1 mile stretches of beach that states are cleaning and monitoring biannually. MARCO's Mid-Atlantic Ocean Data Portal is an innovative online tool that centralizes the region's spatial data, making a diverse range of environmental, socioeconomic, infrastructure, and jurisdictional information readily accessible to decision makers, resource managers, stakeholders, and the public. Under the direction of the board, the MARCO Data Portal team maintains this tool, identifies data priorities, and works with partners to address gaps and develop new information and data. There are truly so many uses of the portal. If you've not visited it, it is another resource I highly recommend checking out, no matter what space you're working in. In addition to the cleanup layer, the work group is exploring other opportunities to utilize the portal, such as by leveraging our partnership with the research community and Maricus, who have data tools for forecasting and real-time tracking, which could be applicable to floatables such as marine debris. So pretty exciting stuff happening with the portal on this group. Here's an image of what the new layer will look like when you first activate it under the water quality theme. So you can see the full region there and labels for where each of these stretches of beach that these cleanup activities happen on. And then you can click to zoom in. And when you do that, you can click on the line and you'll see a dialog box that will appear showing the number of balloon and non-balloon debris that was collected there during each monitoring event. So it's really, really a fantastic tool for people to see. In addition to this new layer on the portal, we've created a companion story map. Thank you to Nick Mead from Virginia CZM. This is a beautiful companion piece where you can see some images from the monitoring events that are happening. So you'll see a description and some photos from each of the locations throughout the region. So it's really, really a great thing. So the web address is down here, and we can certainly be sharing this in upcoming Marco communications. Last but not least, the work group has partnered with NOAA to create and maintain the Marine Debris Collaborative Portal. And so the story behind this is, in order to determine what type of marine debris and projects the work group should focus on, they had created an Excel file of previously conducted projects in all 5 states. Meanwhile, NOAA had been working with the Great Lakes states to create a collaborative website which served the same function, but also included a mapping feature for the projects. So NOAA generously offered to create a similar collaborative website for the Mid-Atlantic, into which data from our Excel file could be uploaded. This Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Collaborative website allows identified staff in each state to upload information about marine debris reduction efforts. This website can also be viewed by all stakeholders and the general public. There are currently over 90 projects in the database, and the work group continues to solicit updates from fellow members and partners in the region. And again, the URL is right down there. Thank you so much again for this opportunity to speak to you all today. My contact information is listed. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any additional questions.
Thank you so much, Avalon. And I think I may deviate a little from script because we are a little bit ahead of schedule and we do have some questions in the chat. So I was thinking maybe we'll take them right now while they're fresh in people's minds. But still encourage everyone, if you think of more questions for Avalon or Christy, continue to put them in the chat while we're talking. Not the chat, the Q&A box. So the first one was from Trey with the Anacostia Riverkeeper, and he's asking, how did we capture and structure focus groups around demographics for the balloon release study, and what areas geographically did we get respondents from? And I can help you with that, Avalon, if you need any.
Sure, thanks, Laura. I'll take a crack at it, and then feel free to jump in if I miss anything. So, and again, I encourage you, this is a wonderful question, and I think that Steve will be able to answer a lot of this as well during his presentation on day 3. But really, OpinionWorks does a wonderful job of making sure that the full region is covered within each of their surveys and focus groups. So we made sure to kind of span all 5 states. And then last year, we also conducted an additional round of surveys specifically meant to increase the diversity of our respondents. So we worked with our aquarium partners, many of whom have community programs, and utilized their staff and their community program staff to kind of work with the members of those communities to help respond and make sure that we were getting respondents from all over the region and from many levels of knowledge about balloon releases and environmental hazards and things like that. So this is really where the aquarium partners have been such a key player in our message development. Laura, I don't know if you have anything else to add there.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think the National Aquarium, particularly in Baltimore, did a great job for us of running by our messages from by underserved communities, people of color, that, it was hard for us to reach. And so that was a really wonderful added dimension to the focus groups that we did carry out. in the region. So it was really helpful. And then we have another question from Circe at CB Nears, Virginia, asking whether we are thinking of seasonal messaging. And there's apparently a water balloon craze going on this summer. And perhaps that's another target behavior with regard to balloons that we need to keep an eye on. So thanks for that, Circe. And I guess we can try to add that to the list, but sure, if people are, playing with water balloons out at the beach, and they're being left in the water, those are just as damaging as the balloons released into the air at celebrations or remembrance events. So we thank you for that. And then Weinberger Jay is asking, the website for the interactive map showing the cleanups. Yeah, if you go to the Marco Ocean Data Portal and go to the water quality theme, we just put it up the other day. And I don't know, this might be risky, Avalon, to share your screen if you can pull up the portal, but it's really cool. You just go to the water quality theme, and then you'll see layers under that for marine debris balloon monitoring. And when you see the little line segments beside each state, you just click on that and a little dialog box comes up and it shows you the numbers of balloons and balloon pieces that were collected, as well as the number of other items collected. And we're going to be keeping a running total of those over time through each monitoring. So, and then
sorry, Laura, my portal webpage is not loading. I don't know.
No worries. Hopefully I described it well enough. And then I think Virginia Whitmer is typing an answer into the Q&A box or the chat. I'm not sure. I'm in the Q&A box. Yep. But check in the chat. She might have put it there. Where to find those balloon videos that we saw during the break. And so thank you, Virginia, for typing in the web address for those. And I think that answered the questions in the Q&A. And so with that, I thank you, Avalon and Christy. And we're going to do a little poll at this point. So if our friends at Longwood could go ahead and pull up the poll, and everybody get ready to remember your poll answering skills. Are folks at Longwood able to pull that up? There we go. All right, so which debris type are you most concerned about? And we'll give you about a minute or so to fill that out, and then we'll see the results. I know it's probably a hard choice because they're all really important. All right, and there are the results. Very interesting. So it looks like the winner is plastic beverage bottles at 36%, but a pretty good distribution. I guess the second runner-up is derelict fishing gear. So items of great concern and things that are in both, I know, our Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan and the regional plan to be working on. So if you are in our region, we hope you'll join us in working on all of those. Okay, well, thank you all for that. And I think we will move on now to our next speaker, and we're getting to be back on schedule again. And so our next speaker is Nancy Wallace. And we're going to be talking about federal initiatives now. So Nancy is the Director of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Marine Debris Program. So we're so happy to have you with us. And her background, she's the Marine Debris Program Federal Lead for researching, preventing, and reducing the impacts of marine debris in the whole U.S. And she's chair of the Interagency Marine Debris Coordinating Committee and the former chair of the United Nations Global Partnership on Marine Litter and the co-chair of the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation's Marine Debris Working Group. Nancy's worked on ocean policy related issues for more than 20 years, and her work has included resource conservation with the National Park Service, developing sustainable catch limits for fisheries off the east coast of the US, and efforts to improve water quality in the Gulf of Mexico. So with that, we'll turn it over to you, Nancy, and hopefully your camera's coming on.
Oh, can you see me?
You know what, I think I've lost my, somehow I lost my, there you are, there you are.
So you're on.
It was me.
You've got your slides.
So we're gonna pull up your slides for you, Nancy, and the Longwood team is working on that now. But we are so honored to have you with us. We know you're super busy taking care of marine debris across the country and the world.
Well, thank you so much, Laura, for having me. Thanks to everybody, all the organizers, for doing such an amazing job pulling the summit together, especially in the virtual world. I know we're all getting used to it, but it does take extra effort. So thank you. And I've just been thrilled today to be able to listen to all the phenomenal work that is happening in the States and the District of Columbia with all of the work on marine debris. So thank you so much. And we'll see, I think Longwood folks are going to pull up my slides. There we go, because I don't trust myself with technology, so I appreciate the help.
All
right.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Longwood.
Sure. So as Laura said, I'm Nancy Wallace, and I'm the director of the Marine Debris Program at NOAA. So we can go to the next slide. And what I'll do today is just speak a little bit about our program in general. The history of the program. You've already heard some of it from our Mid-Atlantic coordinator, Christy, today. But just as background, the Marine Debris Program was established by Congress in 2006 as the federal lead for marine debris through the Marine Debris Act. And then in 2018, we were reauthorized again through the Save Our Seas Act and were given some new responsibilities and mandates. And then again, in December of 2020, so very recently, the Save Our Seas 2.0 Act was signed into law, which again enhances our work to assess, prevent, reduce, and remove marine debris, both in the United States and around the world. And I'm going to speak more to this new law later in the presentation. Next slide. So using the direction provided by Congress in our statutory mandates, we organize our work through the 6 main pillars that you've already seen today, but they're prevention, removal, research, monitoring and detection, emergency response, and coordination. So Christy really talked about the regional coordination aspect of our work and touched on the response work, and I'm going to speak to the other 4. Next slide. So I always like to talk about, well, if you can, next slide, there we go. I always really like to talk about our prevention projects first, right? Because I think everybody realizes all the other work around marine debris is incredibly important, but if we don't stop marine debris from occurring in the first place, we're going to be working on this issue forever. So what we do at the Marine Debris Program is we fund a number of prevention projects that aim to reduce marine debris at its source. So with these projects, we seek to raise awareness of the issue and create lasting changes in behavior that can reduce marine debris. So these behaviors can be everything from using a reusable bag instead of a plastic or paper one, refusing a plastic straw, switching from disposable foodware to reusable alternatives, as you can see here in this picture. And so in order to do this, we work with our partners who work directly with students and their teachers to change behaviors in classrooms, as well as fishers or businesses. And then we also support the installation of upstream measures, such as booms, traps, and other devices that can capture trash before it actually travels into the marine environment. Next slide. So one great example of our prevention work that we fund with our partners is in Prince George's County, Maryland. So right over the district line over in Maryland, our partners at the Alice Ferguson Foundation have partnered with teachers from 10 high schools to engage over 500 students in projects and activities that help to reduce littering behavior. So the project builds off previously successful campaigns to train and equip students to lead their community cleanups. They pilot their own litter prevention strategies, what will work best for them in their communities, and also to mentor younger students in their communities. So students begin by participating in classroom programs. They've learned about commonly littered items and understand the impacts of that marine debris. And then they explore the types of trash that they're producing at their school and brainstorm solutions. And so after they worked to develop these solutions, they voted on what they thought were the best solutions. And so an example, at Oxen Cove High School, students decorated and deployed multiple Adopt a Litter cans at litter hotspots on school property. So providing an opportunity for proper disposal, the students are really hoping to change that littering behavior among their peers. Next slide. Unfortunately, there is a lot of marine debris that's already in the environment, and it's causing impacts right now. So every single year, we fund a number of community-based marine debris removal projects to help remove debris that's already out in the environment. And these projects can help benefit and reduce the impacts to coastal habitat, waterways, and wildlife. So over the course of the program, we've funded more than 160 of these types of projects and removed more than 22,000 metric tons of debris. Next slide. So a good example in the Mid-Atlantic of one of these projects is in New Jersey. So in New Jersey, local fishermen have been using the waters of Barnegat Bay to catch crabs for generations. And over the past 5 years, Stockton University scientists have worked with Southern New Jersey commercial crabbers to break the cycle of derelict crab trap loss and train them to use low-cost sonar methods to identify lost gear. Recovering derelict crab pots and other debris can help reduce the mortality of crabs and fish and other species that are inadvertently trapped. Through this project, researchers at Stockton are building off of previous successes and relationships that they have already developed with the commercial crabbing industry to engage the next generation of fishermen. Stockton pairs the newer crabbers who are just entering the fishery with experienced crabbers who can provide mentoring and pass along the skills needed to locate and remove derelict fishing gear. So using sonar, commercial crabbers have already removed over 1,000 lost traps during the fishery's off season, which is just incredibly impressive. Next slide. Another example in the Mid-Atlantic region is in Jamaica Bay, which is one of New York City's largest unique estuaries. It's a really popular location for urban recreation, and it's actually almost equal to the size of Manhattan. So it's a very big area. So we have partnered with the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation to remove medium to large debris items at 2 sites in the estuary. The project is facilitating the removal of up to 600 yards of material from the marshes, including 6 vessels, as well as construction debris and smaller consumer debris items. And then this is really important. In addition to large-scale removal efforts, the project's also engaging local community members to clean up small debris, which will help encourage future protection and conservation efforts. With all of our removal projects, we really try to make sure that there is an outreach and education, a prevention component, because as I said before, we don't want to continue to just remove this debris over time. We want to prevent it. Next slide. Another very important area for NOAA is research. And in order to answer many complex questions about marine debris, we fund research projects with many different partners. And these projects focus on the impacts of marine debris to commercial seafood species, whether exposure to plastics and chemicals can harm wildlife, how marine debris is transported, where it ends up, and then the economic impacts of marine debris. Next slide. So one example of one of the projects that we're providing funding for is in the University of Delaware, with the University of Delaware. So researchers from the university are investigating how microplastics may affect blue crab larvae at different developmental stages. So data collected from the field, as well as modeling exercises and lab experiments, will allow researchers to quantify the risk of blue crab survival and movement into the Delaware Bay as a result of microplastic ingestion. So as I'm sure many of you know, these crabs begin life as tiny plankton size drifting in coastal surface waters where they're exposed to microplastics along with their food sources. So this study will quantify what the risk is from that exposure from those microplastics, and will test whether that exposure impacts blue crab survival and settlement to mid-Atlantic bight estuaries. So hopefully this risk assessment will be able to result in a decision-making tool for blue crab managers in the mid-Atlantic region, that they could actually potentially take the impacts of marine debris into how they're managing these stocks. Next slide. Another component, one of our pillars, is monitoring and detection. So this program was launched by our Marine Debris Program back in 2012, and it's a citizen science initiative that engages our partners and volunteers in using standardized monitoring protocols to survey and record marine debris. Monthly surveys help us better understand the amount and the types of debris on shorelines, and we are hoping to expand this program even further in the future. We've just had a big concerted effort that we've put towards this program. We've released an updated monitoring protocol. We have a new survey guide and a brand new database that is just really wonderful. They're all now available. And I'll put a plug in for a future talk this week about the Marine Debris Monitoring and Assessment Project. Our monitoring coordinator, Hillary Burgess, will be speaking Thursday afternoon. So I really encourage you to tune into her presentation to learn more about this particular program. Next slide. You've already heard about the great work that the Mid-Atlantic region is doing on balloons, but I want to take it back a little bit in history to talk about how some of that data was collected. So in Virginia, the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program, supported by the Office of Coastal Management at NOAA and the Marine Debris Program, as well as Virginia Aquarium and Clean Virginia Waterways and other partners, conducted a monitoring program from 2014 through 2018 with monthly monitoring at different sites in Virginia. They were at 4 different locations in Virginia. And what they found was that these relatively inaccessible beaches, there were over 15,000 debris items in these 4 areas. And balloons were the #1 item counted at one site and in the top 10 at the other three sites, and a total of 660 balloons were recorded during the project surveys. And why that's so important is because of that data, because of the work that this group did in collecting this information, they were able to then say, how can we prevent it, right? Now we have this data, we know this is a problem, let's work to try to prevent it. And because of that, we were able to provide some funding through our prevention grants to help support that, and now the larger Mid-Atlantic region. And because of that data, these groups were more competitive because we knew it was a problem, we had the data, and then hopefully over time, we'll be able to see the impacts of this prevention work and actually see that decrease. So it's really so important to link all these pieces together. Next slide. All right, now switching gears, so moving out of the NOAA Marine Debris Program's work specifically, I want to talk a little bit more about the whole federal family. So back in 2006, when the Marine Debris Act was passed, part of that act established an interagency marine debris coordinating committee, which is responsible for streamlining federal government efforts to address marine debris. And NOAA serves as the chair of the IMDCC. And what's really important about this is there are so many federal agencies that have a part to play in solving the problem of marine debris, and everybody really has a different niche. And what's great about the IMDCC is that it's a body for us all to come together, share information, hopefully not duplicate efforts, and then look for those collaborative opportunities that work for multiple agencies when that makes sense. So we share best practices, we coordinate on responses to marine debris, kind of both in the everyday world, but then also severe marine debris events like the hurricanes Christy talked about before. And on this slide, what you can see is the agencies that are listed in white are official confirmed members of the IMDCC, and then the 2 listed in yellow are agencies that participate, and we're still working through that membership process. But what's been really wonderful over the past few years is more agencies keep joining, which means that we're going to have more collective effort to help solve the problem. Next slide. Okay, and then now getting into this new act, Save Our Seas 2.0. Again, it was signed into law in December of 2020. And it really is focusing on the work that we're doing both domestically, but then also internationally. So I'm going to speak on the next few slides about Title I, which has a lot of impacts to NOAA. So it's the work that the NOAA Marine Debris Program is working on. But there are also Titles 2 and 3, which really impact the work of EPA, which I'm sure you'll hear more about, and then also the Department of State and USAID. So there's a lot of information in this act, and I'm only going to be speaking to a piece of it. And what's listed here on this slide are some of the NOAA requirements. So if you can go to the next slide, I'll dive into these a little bit deeper. So the first big thing I want to talk about is the Marine Debris Foundation. So the passage of the Save Our Seas 2.0 Act established a new Marine Debris Foundation. So a foundation specifically for working on the issue of marine debris. And there's lots of amazing nonprofits that are already out there that are doing this. This is a new congressionally mandated foundation, which is really exciting. And so we at the Marine Debris Program are responsible for helping to set up this new foundation. And so we are in the process of that right now. We are soliciting nominees for the board of directors. Actually, that's recently closed. So we're going to be in the review process now, and it's up to the Undersecretary of NOAA to appoint the first 12 directors to this new board. And what we are very much hoping is that the board will represent diverse points of view relating to assessment, prevention, reduction, and removal of marine debris, but also be a diverse board. That's something that's very important, and that we have the opportunity to help from the get-go start with that in mind. So that is fully underway. If we go to the next slide, so once the foundation is established, work will begin to implement this next requirement, which is to administer a Genius Prize for Save Our Seas innovation. So the prize competition will encourage technical innovation with the potential to reduce plastic waste and associated potential pollution. So hopefully to prevent marine debris. And there'll be prizes that are going to be awarded on a regular basis, and the whole judging panel that will be set up. And so once the foundation is started, NOAA will work to set up an agreement with the foundation to help administer that prize. Next slide. And then there are lots of studies and reports that are required. So the first two listed here are in yellow are for the Interagency Marine Debris Coordinating Committee to work on. And then the other four are NOAA's responsibility. So as you can see, we are required to work on a report on the opportunities for innovative uses for plastic waste and consumer products, as well as a report on microfiber pollution. We are currently funding a national level study in collaboration with the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine to evaluate the contributions of the US to global plastic waste. And the committee has been stood up, and they are actively working on this right now. And hopefully we'll have a final report that we will be able to share publicly sometime in 2022. And then we also have requirements related to evaluating the sources and impacts of derelict fishing gear, the feasibility of vessel recycling, and incentive programs for fishers to collect any plastic they encounter while at sea. So as you can imagine, we are quite busy trying to meet all of these new requirements. Next slide. And then another thing to mention is that while we've worked internationally for many, many years, the new Save Our Seas 2.0 Act actually enhances our ability to operate internationally. So we have now a provision within the language to support the Secretary of State and the Administrator of the United States Agency for International Development to help build partnerships with other governments in foreign countries to support international efforts to combat marine debris. So the Department of State is the lead agency for that engagement, but we are helping to support them. We also are involved in a number of other international groups. So we work very closely with the Global Partnership on Marine Litter. We're involved in Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, as well as the Global Ghost Gear Initiative. And then we really try to help support countries bilaterally when we can through providing some technical expertise. Next slide. And then the last thing I wanted to mention today is just another new opportunity. So recently, in the past few years, there was a new trade agreement. So this is the new NAFTA. It's called the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. And for the first time, marine debris was included in a trade agreement, which is pretty amazing. So we have this new requirement to work on marine debris through our border regions with Canada and Mexico. We were allocated $8 million of funding through that Appropriations Act associated with the USMCA implementation. And so we are working to fund projects that prevent and remove marine debris in the border areas of the United States, Mexico, and Canada. So we're currently in the process of reviewing our first round of project proposals, and we will plan to announce all those projects later this summer. And then our plan is in fiscal year 2022, we will be funding, again, looking to fund projects for this trade agreement, and we're going to be including them in our notice of funding opportunities for removal and prevention that will be announced later this summer, and they will include a component of USMCA funding. So again, a pretty exciting development, and just shows how much marine debris is growing internationally, the focus and being able to work on different solutions. So if you go to the next slide, I will just say a big thank you again to all of you for all the amazing work you're doing, and I look forward to the questions in the panel session later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I just learned a ton. It's so amazing, the breadth of what you all are doing, and just want to express my gratitude to NOAA. We are 100% funded in our CZM program from NOAA, so thank you very much, and all the support you've given to our balloon project or regional project. It's just been terrific, and this is so exciting with the new foundation and the Save Our Seas legislation, and now this whole NAFTA agreement. That's just amazing. So it really is as if the world is starting to wake up about this problem. And the other kind of emerging theme I'm hearing today is all the other organizations that we need to step up and get involved in the issue. So it was great to see your list of other federal agencies that you're pulling into the fold. In the past, it's mainly been NOAA and EPA. So I'm sure both of your agencies are excited to get more people at the table to help. So that's just terrific. Okay, so we're almost at 4 o'clock, not quite. Just remind folks to put their questions in the Q&A box. And also, I'm just wondering, I had asked Virginia Whitmer to put the link to those balloon videos in the chat, but I don't think she has access to the chat. So Virginia, if you could put that link in the Q&A box, that would be great. And I just wanted to respond very quickly to AL. I'm not sure who that is, but that person was just curious about how considering beverage and food containers as separate categories rather than just food packaging, for example, helped the purpose of the poll. Because while it is a tough choice, and because while food containers are ubiquitous, derelict gear is just truly horrific in some of the injuries it leaves behind. So anyway, we weren't trying to do anything terribly scientific with the poll, but just kind of curious. We do want to make sure we're working on things that people believe are very important. So anyway, thanks for that. So we've cleared out the Q&A box, so please continue to put questions in there as we go along. And now I will turn it to the EPA side of the Federal House there and welcome Gabriella Neusner from EPA. Gabriella is an ORISE Research Fellow with EPA's Trash Free Waters program. And in that role, she supports a variety of projects designed to reduce the volume of trash entering US waterways. And prior to this, she worked at DAI Global, LLC, where she supported several USAID-funded environment projects in Southeast Asia, and she earned a Master's of Global Environmental Policy from American University's School of International Service. So thanks so much for joining us, Gabriella, and we look forward to hearing what EPA is up to.
Yeah, thanks very much, Laura, for the introduction, and thanks to all the organizers of the summit. It's been a great learning opportunity so far. I'm also really grateful to Nancy and Christy for their presentations, because they've covered a lot of the background information to set the stage for talking about EPA's Trash Free Waters program. So the Trash Free Waters program was created in 2013 to tackle the growing problem of aquatic trash or marine debris. And underlying the Trash Free Water program's approach is the idea that aquatic trash is a complex problem and it requires interdisciplinary and collaborative solutions. So in this presentation, I'll explain how Trash Free Waters is working across sectors and with a wide range of partners to reduce the amount of trash entering our waterways. But before I do this, I'll briefly describe the legal and organizational context in which the Trash Free Waters program is situated. So we're located within the EPA's main Office of Water, specifically a sub-office called the Office of Wetlands, Oceans, and Watersheds. And there's a lot of other offices within EPA that are working on aquatic trash or marine debris issues, and Trash Free Waters helps to facilitate communication and collaboration between them. So I'll just highlight here that the Office of Land and Emergency Management is who leads our EPA's efforts on solid waste management, recycling, sustainable materials management. And in fact, they just released a draft national recycling strategy and received public comments and are currently making some real substantive changes based on those comments. So that's something to look forward to. And our main research office is the Office of Research and Development, though there's some research that goes on outside that office. And importantly, the 10 EPA regional offices and geographic programs are who usually lead Trash Free Waters efforts in specific places around the country. And then on the right side of the slide, you see a list of EPA's statutory drivers with respect to aquatic trash. And Save Our Seas 2.0, which Nancy talked about, is the most recent law passed in December. And I'll touch more on that at the end of the presentation. But though much of what EPA does is statute driven, not everything is. And the Trash Free Waters program is an example of a voluntary non-statutory program that works through partnerships to reduce trash littings in the nation's waterways. The Trash Free Waters team in EPA headquarters, which I'm on, is responsible for defining and guiding the program strategy at the national level, as well as coordinating with the other EPA offices and other federal agencies. All 10 EPA regions, which you can see here on the map, have a Trash Free Waters coordinator, or they might have a Trash Free Waters team who develop an annual Trash Free Waters work plan for the region. And it is important to note that EPA Trash Free Waters works in inland and coastal regions and focuses primarily on inland sources of trash, which is why you'll often hear me refer to aquatic trash as opposed to marine debris. So I'm not excluding kind of inland trash. And Trash Free Waters work in the Mid-Atlantic region is led primarily by EPA Regions 2 and 3, as well as the Chesapeake Bay Program Office, which supports the Chesapeake Bay program. So although trash is a problem in all parts of the US, there's no one-size-fits-all solution, as we know. Each region has its own unique challenges, needs, and opportunities with respect to aquatic trash prevention. Plus, as you've heard in previous presentations, much of the important work currently being done to address the issue is happening at the local level, or the state or regional level. So for these reasons, the Trash Free Waters program focuses much of its efforts on projects in a specific region, be it a watershed, state, municipality, or community. And we refer to these as place-based projects, and they're at the core of what the program does. And so you'll see that's the number one on this priorities list. That being said, we also recognize that it's important to capture lessons learned from around the country and develop best management practices and share that information nationwide. So, and EPA Trash Free Waters has an important role to play in helping facilitate that communication and collaboration between communities that have this shared goal of reducing aquatic trash. And so that's why the Trash Free Waters program also develops tools and resources that can help communities across the country achieve this goal. And I'll discuss some examples of that later on. The third program priority is about partnerships, which you've already heard a lot about. But working with external partners is really the only way for us to get projects implemented on the ground. So you'll keep hearing about that. Another priority for Trashy Waters is, of course, supporting research efforts to better understand the problem, as well as conducting public outreach and education on aquatic trash. This is just some examples of our regular outreach activities, which include periodic newsletters, topical webinars, and an educational article series. Before I get to some specific examples of Trashy Waters projects in the Mid-Atlantic region, I just want to highlight some of the important partners we work with in the region. As I mentioned, the work in the Mid-Atlantic is for the most part driven by EPA Region 2 and 3 offices, as well as the Chesapeake Bay Program Office. But some of the most important partners in the region are the National Estuary Programs and the Chesapeake Bay Program. The National Estuary Program is a non-regulatory EPA program that was established by Congress and is authorized under the Clean Water Act. So there's 28 NEPs across, NEPs is shorthand for National Estuary Program, across the country, and there's 7 in the Mid-Atlantic region. And each of the NEPs consists of a group of stakeholders that can include representatives from NGOs or the private sector, academia, or government. And together, this group works to improve the health of their estuary. NEPs are often key partners for Trashy Waters work. They occasionally provide grants or funding for projects that reduce aquatic trash. And these projects really benefit from the established network of stakeholders that's already a part of the NEP. And then, of course, Marco's Marine Debris Work Group and NOAA's Mid-Atlantic Marine Debris Planning Process, which you've heard about, have also brought together a wide range of stakeholders to coordinate efforts, which has been extremely helpful. I should also mention the Urban Waters Federal Partnership Program, which is another non-regulatory program that leverages partnerships in specific locations. It's specifically focused on communities that are overburdened or economically distressed, but they've been another important partner for Trashy Waters. So I'm now going to describe a few examples of Trashy Waters initiatives that EPA has implemented or supported either by providing funding or technical assistance. And this is by no means an exhaustive list of everything we're working on, but we'll give you a better sense of what the program's all about. And we'll start with source reduction. So as Nancy said, the most effective way to prevent trash from ending up in our waterways is to reduce the amount of waste that we create in the first place. And so one example of a source reduction project that EPA supported is the Protect Our Sand and Sea campaign. With support from EPA and other donors, Maryland Coastal Bays National Estuary Program, the city of Ocean City, Maryland, and other partners developed a program that encouraged restaurants in Ocean City to commit to reducing the amount of plastic waste that they produce by signing on to specific waste reduction pledges. And this is just one of many education outreach campaigns that are happening in both Region 3 and Region 2. There's a lot of work going on in Region 2 under the Long Island Sound Study. But I don't have time to discuss all of them, so I'll move on. And so the next category of projects we work on is litter and illegal dumping. And ensuring that waste is disposed of properly is an important way in which we're trying to prevent trash from escaping into the environment. One example is EPA Region 3's work with the city of Philadelphia and other watershed groups to encourage proper trash disposal. So the project team installed beautifully painted trash can lids in busy commercial corridors. And you can see a picture of that on the right. So this project is another example of why collaboration with external partners is really important. The team used data from Philadelphia's Zero Waste and Litter Cabinet to identify litter hotspots where the trash cans would be most needed. And so that was a really critical part of the project planning. And then just briefly, I'll mention the DC Curbside Disposal Pilot Project. This is a project that was led by Trashy Water's headquarters in partnership with the Washington, DC Mayor's Office of the Clean City. And it's designed to address the problem of trash spilling out of trash bins on collection day, which has been identified as a significant source of aquatic trash. And so through this project, the team developed stickers with tips for reducing trash spillage that residents could place on their trash bins. And so the team is collecting data to assess the impact of this campaign, and we'll soon write up a case study that we will publish on our website. And we hope it can inform efforts of other municipalities who might be interested in doing something similar. So moving on to stormwater. Stormwater is a primary nexus for trash getting into waterways. So addressing the trash and stormwater is a big focus for the Trash Free Waters program. And under the Clean Water Act, municipal stormwater sewer systems, municipal storm sewer system permits, MS4 permits, can be written to set standards to limit the amount of trash released from stormwater outfalls into rivers and streams. And thousands of municipalities across the country have trash provisions in their MS4 permits. And EPA regional offices play a role in reviewing or providing technical assistance or commentary on the MS4 permits or their revisions. And EPA also works with relevant state and municipal government agencies to provide support for the development of TMDLs for trash, but TMDLs are pretty rare, and there's only 4 states that have TMDLs for trash, 2 of them being in the Mid-Atlantic region, which is the Anacostia watershed and the Baltimore Harbor. And while it's not a focus for our program, we recognize that TMDLs can be an important driver of action on aquatic trash. But all this is to say that the Mid-Atlantic region is home to some cities that are leading the way in efforts to manage trash and stormwater. And Trash Free Waters is working to help facilitate knowledge exchange by sharing information and lessons learned from cities like DC, Baltimore, and New York, which have really interesting programs to manage trash in their stormwater, which Director Tommy Wells spoke about earlier. And one example of how we're trying to share information is the Trash Stormwater Permit Compendium. This was released in April, and it's on our website. So we wanted to provide stormwater permit writers, as well as municipal stormwater planners and watershed planners and others, with helpful information so that they could write effective trash provisions into their stormwater permits or stormwater management plans. And this is, as I said, this is on our website, and we're starting now to market this document. And then I just briefly wanted to mention some of the work that Trash Free Waters is supporting related to trash capture, which, as Nancy said, can be an important way to deal with trash that has already escaped into the environment and prevent it from polluting waterways. You'll see here on the slide is a picture of a sea bin, which is an in-water trash capture device. EPA Region 3's Water Division is providing resources to DC DOEE to install sea bins in DC area waterways. And I'm just gonna kind of breeze through some of this to save time. So there's still a lot we don't know about aquatic trash, and these knowledge gaps prevent us from effectively addressing the problem. We need more information on how much trash is in our waterways, how it's getting there, and what happens once it gets there. So some of our efforts are focused on litter monitoring and data collection. I'll just mention the Escape Trash Assessment Protocol, or ETAP, which is a protocol that provides a standard method for collecting and assessing litter data. And it's a detailed trash characterization protocol. It's not a rapid assessment methodology. So we're not claiming that ETAP is the right tool for every interested party out there, but it is right for some, and we hope that it'll be potentially useful to inform stormwater permit provisions and stormwater management plans, and other efforts. So I will just briefly say that there's a lot of work going on in regions 2 and 3 on microplastics research, and this is just a teaser for tomorrow's presentation by Matt Robinson on the Plastic Pollution Action Team's efforts to in the Chesapeake Bay region. Region 3's Kelly Summers has been working closely with the Plastic Pollution Action Team on this, and it's going to be a really interesting presentation. So make sure you tune in. I'm running out of time, so I think I'll skip right to the end and mention just the EPA's equities from Save Our Seas 2.0 Act. So yeah, I'll start with the grant programs. Section 302 of the Save Our Seas Act 2.0 authorizes 4 new EPA grant programs, among them a new Trash Free Waters National Grants Program. And this would be the first time we'd have a national Trash Free Waters Grants Program. There's no federal year 2021 appropriation for the grant program, and we don't, it's an appropriation in future years is uncertain, but this is something that we're closely watching. The Act also calls for it's called a strategy on post-consumer materials management and water management. And EPA efforts to develop this strategy are currently underway. And then lastly, the legislation requires EPA to do several reports and studies. There's at least 6. So I'll just say briefly, one is about a study on the effects of microplastics in food supplies and water, a report on incentives to spur new end-use markets for recycled plastics, and other studies having to do with plastic waste and recyclable materials. And then just most of these reports are due within 1 or 2 years. So we can expect to learn a lot in the next couple of years.
Great.
I'll leave it at that. Sorry, I went over time.
Thank you, Gabriella. We appreciate all that, and so much going on. And there's Gabriella's contact info if you want to catch up with her some more. But great. Well, we are a few minutes behind, so we're going to jump right to Ben Moorer. He's our last speaker of the day. So thank you for hanging in there, Ben. And he's joining us from the West Coast. And I think, Gabriella, if you can turn off your sound, your microphone. I was getting a little bit of feedback. There we go. Okay. So Ben is with the National Renewable Energy Lab. He has some exciting new work to tell us about on waterborne plastics assessments and collection technologies. He's a research engineer at NREL and principal investigator for the Waterborne Plastics Assessment and Collection Technologies Project, also called WaterPact. and he leads a Department of Energy funded cross-disciplinary multi-laboratory team developing technologies to characterize, harvest, convert, and avoid plastic debris in the US waterways, and received his PhD in oceanography from Scripps Institute. So yay, Ben, thank you so much. And we look forward to hearing it, and your slides are up looking beautiful.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura, and thanks for having me as a speaker. This has been a great day. I've learned a ton. I'm grateful for all the other speakers and the organizers, and also the 140 some odd attendees I think I saw. It's been a really neat day. So as Laura mentioned, I am the PI for Water Pact. It is a new initiative. This is actually the first time today. This is the first time that we're announcing this publicly. We've been working on this project to get it scoped and funded for about 10 months, and we've received our seed funding from DOE. And on that point, I want to mention specifically that I'm not a DOE representative. I work as a research scientist at the labs. I'm not a federal employee, but I am running this DOE funded program. And this DOE funded program is through the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, or EERE, and it spans three different sub-offices or program offices within DOE, and that's the Water Power Technologies Office, which typically funds things like wave and tidal power, the Advanced Manufacturing Office that deals with a lot of the new developments in how to manufacture things efficiently, and then finally, the Bioenergy Technologies Group, which looks at things like biomass. So this is a project that has a 10-month run so far. Depending on how you want to count, we've got about 27 researchers that have been working on this from across a variety of disciplines, including chemistry, oceanography, limnology, just straight up engineering, and a few social scientists and economists. And we're spanning 2 national laboratories. So I represent the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or NREL. We're also working as partners with Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. And then finally, this is leveraging a lot of ongoing research in the terrestrial space by BOTTLE, which is a broad consortium funded by the DOE in a very similar model, but is very terrestrially focused. It's bio-optimized technologies to keep thermoplastics out of landfills in the environment. So it's a mouthful, but bottle.org if you want to see more information on that. We share a lot of researchers, we share a lot of research direction with them, and they've been very instrumental in getting us set up under DOE funding here. So really what we're hoping to accomplish, and I recognize it's a very long vision for a federal program, but what we're hoping to accomplish is a broader technology portfolio that can implement a significant reduction in aquatic, inland, and near waters of coastal seas plastic debris over the next 20 years, which should account for about 10 million metric tons of plastic debris being harvested and reintroduced, ideally, back into the circular economy. So we anticipate there would be 4 pillars to this research and development portfolio. That would include sensing, collection, conversion, and redesign. Sensing is going to be technologies like real-time networks, debris tracing, renewable energy integration into these sorts of devices. You can imagine a turbine powering a Raman spectroscopy unit in a river. Collection, there's already a bunch of collection devices. Most of them are focused on floating macroplastic debris. We'd like to broaden that out for the full spectrum of depth and width in the river, the different chemistries, the different sizes of plastics that are there. And that's also something that's ripe for renewable energy integration to get them off of shore power and able to be implemented wherever. We'd also like to improve the performance of the existing devices that are out there that are, again, focused on floating macroplastics. Conversion, this is where we start to overlap a lot with the BOTTLE initiative that already exists, but there are very specific questions to aquatic plastics around degraded plastics. So they're exposed to physical UV degradation, mechanical degradation, chemical degradation in the waterways. They're heterogeneous, they're biofouled. Are there opportunities to leverage that to create more interesting, more marketable reclaimed plastic feedstocks? Conversion would also include things like sorting and also mapping out the supply chain. So once you've got that feedstock, how valuable is it? How far down the supply chain can you go as you try to really implement that circular economy from reclaimed waste, reclaimed pollution? And then finally, redesign. There's a lot of opportunity here, from car tires to foil packaging to whatever else. to avoid these plastic debris getting into watersheds and ultimately into the concentrators, the waterways in each of those watersheds. But redesign might also include things like designing plastic specifically from reclaimed waterborne debris, whether that's aquatic or marine. So this is the vision. We'd like to, over the next 20 years, build towards an industry-led consortium that is driving at those 4 pillars and maintaining active R&D projects in each of those 4 areas to those above goals there. As a first step, though, I think both Nancy and Gabriella talked about their program's interest in shoring up some of the data gaps that exist. There are fantastic models out there, specifically around waste management budget gaps and like specific localized or regional studies. I know the USGS, for example, has done some really great work in microplastics regionally in 2 different areas. The problem that we came up on as we started looking forward towards a technology portfolio is that as you try to take these models and apply them to specific sites or even specific areas of rivers, not just necessarily one project site, they don't have the predictive power. They don't have the precision and accuracy that we would want to do to start developing technologies, developing projects with a lot of potential. So there's a pretty broad gap there for what we'd like to have around the full spectrum of plastic data in inland waterways and coastal seas. And what I mean by full spectrum is size, shape, chemistry, and position in the rivers. So step 1 really is to try to address that gap. And so we looked across the different waterways in the United States, trying to understand what the highest priority waterways were. And we didn't just take the top 5 most polluted per some of the recent research, waste management budgets or field campaigns. What we did was we tried to take kind of a 4 corners approach and bookend the different types of rivers that were out there to create this foundational data set. So again, this would be the broad spectrum of size, shape, chemistry, spatial position within the river. And we looked at these 5 rivers as representing a majority of the plastic debris that would be in inland waterways, according to at least 2 studies, and trying to look at a broad diversity of different, and I'll get into the specifics of what I mean by this, but different parameters for those rivers. So broadly speaking, here's some statistics, a lot of statistics and a bit of an eye chart here. For the 5 different rivers that we chose, the Mississippi, the Delaware, the Sacramento, the Los Angeles, and the Columbia. And in the blue is the rationale for why we chose them. So Mississippi is obviously the 800-pound gorilla in the room. The Delaware I'll get into a little bit later, but there's some really great complementary work that's going on that extends beyond the waterway that we're looking to take advantage of and think really adds a new dimension to the project. Sacramento and Los Angeles both have planned projects. There's a little bit more activity, according to our research, in near-term projects that are going into the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta area. Los Angeles is very periodic, so it's kind of an outlier there and very interesting, especially for rivers in the Southwest. And then finally, the Columbia River up in the Northwest, completing kind of the 4 corners of the US there. And that's really a study in infrastructure. There is an enormous amount of built out water infrastructure on that river that we can take advantage of and see if there are opportunities to co-locate technologies there. Collectively, it represents about 1/3 of the US population, those watersheds. A majority of the plastics, wouldn't read too much into the energy potential numbers we have listed there or the plastic numbers we have listed there. Those numbers have both been revised by later studies, but it gives you a sense of scale for the different rivers comparatively. Finally, I want to mention that this work, as we go out to these rivers and try to sample, we are very much newcomers to this space, and we're not trying to usurp folks or reinvent the wheel here. So we're going to be looking to partner with local universities and nonprofits and other first movers in that space who already have established protocols and tools and relationships and practices for those areas. And then a dimension to what we're trying to do that I think is also really noteworthy is we're going to be trying to partner with HBCUs, HSIs, and AI-ANSIs, specifically to look more at the social dimensions of valuation around cleaning up that plastic. So the first part of that is going out into the field and gathering plastic samples, bringing them back to the lab and analyzing them. So Again, an eye chart, but I included pretty much everything that we thought of so far to illustrate the breadth of things that we're looking at. Again, we're going to be subcontracting out to local established partners, collaborators in this area, and we're going to be asking them to use their existing infrastructure to measure these things all in a very similar way so that we can create comparable data sets. And that really is key to that comparability. So there's three broad categories that we're looking at there. We're looking at physical conditions of the river itself. So both, is it a great site to locate renewable energy generation to power some of these technologies, whether it's detection or collection or conversion? And also in the river, what are the background physical characteristics that are affecting the plastic? How is it being ejected downstream? How is it being degraded? How is it being fouled? Both so that we can understand the product up and down river, but also so that we can model it and extend our understanding, not just to that river, but potentially other similar places in other rivers. The second category there that we're going to be going out and taking data on are the plastics themselves. So we're going to be collecting across, again, the full spectrum of plastics, much as we can, including down to the the micro scale, and taking water samples that'll be shipped back to world-class labs that we have at the National Renewable Energy Lab and the Pacific Northwest National Labs. Right now, the project is scoped to just look at the plastics that are recovered and to characterize them size, shape, and chemistry. But we do have a proposal in at the moment to extend that out to leachate. So look at what chemicals are being desorbed from the plastics and out into the water itself that could be causing problems as well. And then the final category is locality. So we're looking at trying to understand what's the broader context that this inland waterway plastic debris, this coastal sea plastic debris occurs in. On those 5 rivers, both the infrastructure that's available there, as well as the activities in the communities that are potentially being affected or affecting the plastic debris. This is a project that's already actually started, but there is work ongoing looking at how to model fate and transport of plastics along the length of the river. So I mentioned before that we're going to go out to 5 locations, and 1 in each river, and we're going to sample. Those locations are going to be just before it goes out into the ocean, so we can best capture emissions into the Atlantic, the Gulf, and the Pacific. This modeling effort, conversely, is about along river processes. So it's trying to understand the fate and transport of plastic particles plastic debris as they're being transported downstream and ejected into these coastal seas, bays, and such. And so the video on the right that's looping is actually the Puget Sound. We do already have a project in the Delaware that's looking at this, but this is a neat video from the Puget Sound. I'll play it again here. It shows one of the local river mouths ejecting particles, floating particles into the Puget Sound, and the periodicity that you see, the back and forth sloshing motion, that's really the tides that are affecting the flow into spaces. And I think something that's really striking to me about that video is, especially as we're planning our sampling, is how much the sampling location can really affect your density, your concentration estimates. So this modeling effort is going to sit atop an existing ICOM project that's funded by another branch of DOE. That's the Integrated Coastal Modeling Project. If it goes full scale, which I think they're awaiting decision right now, it would be a $150 million project to look at modeling the physics and human interaction within a watershed. And they have 2 sites chosen, one of which overlaps with our choices. That's the Delaware River and the Delaware Bay. And we would be piggybacking on their physics and their human interactions modeling to add modules for plastics, how they're transported, how they're degraded, how they're deposited, how they're picked back up and emitted into the ocean. The third major piece of this first thrust is valuation, and that is trying to put a dollar value. And this is really tricky, but trying to put a dollar value on those plastic debris. So that is looking at the economic, carbon, and energy valuation of that reclaimed feedstock. So we invest energy, we invest greenhouse gases, we invest money in making plastics in the first place. If we can bring those plastics back into the supply chain, how much do we avoid in losses? And on the other side of the scale there are the social health and environmental costs of leaving the pollution in place. So if we can better understand what the costs are to ecosystems, local communities, individuals in those spaces, we can start to make educated decisions on how best to site projects and how best to focus R&D dollars into creating solutions that have the broadest impact, using dollars as a proxy for value. Just a few quick notes. We already have a bunch of existing tools to this end through the Bottle Initiative. We have on the right-hand side there some of those emblems. That's a life cycle assessment, life cycle analysis modeling tool. That's an environmentally extended input-output model, and that's a materials flow through industry. So valuing reclaimed feedstock as opposed to virgin plastics in supply chains. Those already exist. Those would be tailored for aquatic plastics. All of this data would be disseminated through a website that we've mocked up and built. This is a website focused on actors in the space, stakeholders who are already making a difference and enabling them with the best available data. For folks who are interested, I'm very happy to talk about that later, but really the key takeaway there is that it's meant to provide actionable data to folks who are already doing things. So that benchmark data set, the modeling, the valuation would go out in bite-sized pieces. The timeline for this work, we're already started on getting our permitting done, on reaching out to partners and setting up the subcontracts for the field work. This first assessment phase with field campaign modeling, evaluation, and dissemination, we're anticipating will take about 2 years. 1 year of field work where we go out and try to capture the seasonal high, low, and one flooding event. And then all the downstream, no pun intended, modeling, valuation, and dissemination tasks that grow out of that. Following that, we'd like to see a much bigger RD&D portfolio that looks at sensing, collection, conversion, and redesign. Those are those 4 topics I talked about at the top of the talk. And that's really where we start developing technology solutions for this. And there are some milestones on there. There's a lot more in our actual multi-year project plan. But this is the overall layout. We're going to start with assessment over the first 1.5 years, 2 years. And then from year 3 onward, we're really focused on setting up a self-sustaining consortium that really focuses on how to make this an economically viable thing that benefits US taxpayers and cleans up our waterways and communities. So all of this in one slide. This is a quick shot of this. I'm happy to come back to this for any questions. And if you'd like to reach out, this is our contact information. Again, I represent about 27 people who've been working on this and are fantastic. And our website should be up, I think, before the end of the next financial year. And very much looking forward to your questions. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you so much, Ben. That is one massive project. Oh my gosh. Really fascinating. I'd like to invite Nancy and Gabriella to rejoin us on camera if they would like to. Is Nancy still with us too? And there she is. Great. So we have time. I know it's late in the day. People have been listening for a long time this afternoon, but we have time for some Q&A. And I see Tom Spray had something in the Q&A about, I think when you were showing the data for the tonnage of plastics from each river, he thought they seemed kind of low, but I think you did make a comment subsequently that those numbers were being revised.
Authors just published a paper earlier this year, maybe a month or 2 ago, where some of those rivers went up 15x.
Wow. Yeah.
So, yeah.
There you go, Tom.
Yeah, and also those are waste management budget numbers, and so they are tuned against field measurements. And I bet Nancy and Gabriella probably have a better read on what the actual numbers would be, but there's going to be some lack of precision there as well.
Yeah. Then we had another question from Heather from Zero Waste Washington. Is the plan to make new plastic from the aquatic plastic or fuel?
Can I just answer yes?
Sure. You're going to make new plastic.
Well, yes, and fuel. So the idea is,
okay.
Yeah, part of the thought of doing this valuation piece is where, if we can really capture the cost of this, where is the best place to do that? It might be fuel in some cases for some plastics that have been degraded, or in certain locations where fuel is a better alternative. But the Bottle Initiative specifically is focused on recycling and upcycling, and that portion of our team is very interested in creating new plastic products.
Right. Well, I would guess that that's coming from the idea that we want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions too. If you burn this plastic, if you create a fuel, is that creating greenhouse gas? Yeah. All right. And then Trey from Anacostia Riverkeeper is asking, what was the lower limit for the size of plastics that your work's been measuring? How small were the pieces of plastic that you can measure?
Is that for me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So we're actually going to be taking water samples and bringing those back to the bottle and the PNNL EMSL labs, if people are familiar. If we can get the EMSL work funded, the project I mentioned we're still waiting to hear for another 11 days. If we can get that funded, then it would be nanoscale. We would be doing some pretty crazy chemistry. If not, it'll be, I guess, up to whatever the subcontractors and our labs can do, but I don't have a great answer above that.
Okay, no worries. Okay, oops, another one just popped in for Ben. How do you incorporate specific tidal watershed models for Delaware River where freshwater debris inputs also exist?
Yeah, so that's a great question. There are some pretty sophisticated models that already exist that these projects are building on. So there's some really neat FECOM models that are out there that are coupled to the watershed and river models that already exist. And if we had to start from scratch and build those models from nothing, the scope would be way too massive. But that's one of the advantages of actually going through the national labs is we maintain, we maintain those capabilities separately for other purposes already. And so we can co-opt those for plastics, just adding modules on top, but computational modules on top of them.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Okay, I think we're going to shift over now to some questions that came when people registered. And these are for all of you. Anyone can jump in and answer. But the first one was, what marine debris projects are you most excited about that your federal agency is spearheading? It might be a good one for Nancy. I don't know. You've got a huge variety of projects.
Sure, I'm happy to tackle that. I think asking kind of what a favorite project is like asking what your favorite child is, right? Like I'm excited about all the work we're doing. I'll mention 3 things kind of briefly. I get really kind of excited about the projects that we're providing some funding for that really target a specific type of debris, because I find those to be most successful. So whether it be crab pots in Barnegat Bay or balloons in Virginia, right? Being able to really target a specific type of debris to either prevent or remove, and then being able to quantify the metrics helps show that progress, which then I think leads to more success later on. So that's really important. I'm also really excited about some of the work that our program's doing on the justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion front. It's something that has been part of our work for a long time, but I think we're really trying to dive in and make sure that the communities that may have been, underrepresented or underserved, which also can be the communities that are most impacted by marine plastic pollution, are getting the attention that we should be giving. And so we're really working through some of our federal funding opportunities and making sure that we are providing resources that all groups can be competitive for that funding. I think that's really, really important, and we need to be doing better and more work on that. But I think that's been a good shift. And then the last thing I'll mention that I think is just so positive are the regional action plans. And I get to see the different regional plans for the whole country. And what's so neat about them is there are so many of the same issues, but the solutions are slightly different. And that's why those plans are so important, because all of these stakeholders are all doing incredible work. And I think what I really like to be able to do is have our team help facilitate bringing people together to share information, collaborate where possible, and really kind of prioritize those solutions so that we can help provide that funding or help advance that piece. So those are just a couple of things that I'm pretty excited about from the NOAA side.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it is, it's interesting, the DEIJ kind of aspect, it comes across in almost any issue we talk about now. And the capacity for these communities is really quite limited. And it seems like such a barrier to figure out, how can we get help without coming in, and kind of imposing our ideas on them. We have to be really careful to listen carefully in those communities. But it's so hard for people to develop grant applications, whether it's for marine debris or climate change or whatever. So I hear you on that. So that's great, whatever we can do. Let me go next to the question about, for anyone, can you elaborate on how other federal agencies are working together? And I think you all touched on it quite a bit. You're all working with other federal entities, but anything anyone wants to add on that one?
If I could just jump in there first, maybe as a pretty nascent newcomer to this space, it's been amazing working with the other agencies. They've been incredibly supportive. We're hoping to include them on our advisory board, but just as a community overall, there seems to be a lot of goodwill and a lot of extra time that people are willing to put maybe on their own personal hours towards getting things moving. So yeah, nothing but good stuff, but good things to say about collaboration and hoping that continues forward.
Yep, it's such an important issue, even though sometimes I know we all feel exhausted and overwhelmed. It's hard to stop working on it and caring about it because, we just see it. We see this plastic everywhere. So, all right, the third question that came out of the registration was, what areas do you see as emerging fields for innovative technology or new research areas in marine debris?
So I can jump in on this one, and I think Ben really talked about some of this already. One of the things that I'm very excited about is the detection opportunities. So the remote sensing, the unmanned aerial systems, unmanned underwater vehicles, right? Trying to be able to automate some of this data collection and then potentially using AI to be able to quantify it, right? We're not there yet. There's a lot of challenges, but working with some of the other federal partners, like you just mentioned, like NASA, so good at this, right? And so being able to kind of capitalize on some of that amazing expertise that they have for this issue and working together. I think, I think about our monitoring program, which I'm so proud of, but people are out on the beach counting debris. Like if we could somehow get to this more, automated system, we can get that information and really, the reason it's so helpful is that you can understand these preventative measures that we're putting in place or the policies that are being enacted, are we having an impact over time? Is the amount of debris on our shorelines in our water going down? And that, I think, would be such a turning of the tide on kind of that overall solution. So that's an area where I think there's some emerging technology that I'm looking forward to seeing more of.
Yeah, detection, key. Because it's pretty hard and laborious to go out there counting stuff. So if we can find ways to automate it, whether it's gliders or whatever, it's going to be terrific. I have a quick question, Ben, on the video that you showed. How are you getting that light emitting from it looked like light emitting from the plastics? How does that work?
So that's all simulation. The video
it's simulation. Okay.
Yeah, it's all the computer model of the plastics.
It's not real.
Back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah, relatively speaking. But just to add something to Nancy's comment a minute ago, I think that's right on. And networking all that data together, especially if we can continuous real-time data from places and get a look at how the plastic's evolving in place and changing and where it's actually coming from. I mean, I think that's how you end up focusing the solutions better. And it's really encouraging to see so much citizen science, like actually higher quality citizen science that's being done through these different apps and interfaces that are made available to folks. And I'd love to see more of that. The big one for me that I would like to see as a first step is a technology focus on detection and collection of microplastics. I think a lot of stuff kind of, especially things that aren't necessarily floating, I think those sneak by and are pretty noxious.
Yeah. Well, we have you there, Ben. Tom Spray had another question. Is the hydrodynamic modeling you showed Deltares? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Is that some software or?
No, it's the one I was showing particularly. I better check on that, but it's a PNNL in-house model, and I don't think it's Deltares, but I will check real quick.
All right, great. Gabriella, did you want to say something about what you saw as emerging research
Yeah, so an interesting area of emerging research related to the microplastics issue is tire particles, which is a topic that some EPA offices, particularly Region 10, has been focusing on. There was a study published in Science magazine in January that found a link between an additive intended to prevent damage to tire rubber called 6-PPD quinone. Anyways, it has a negative effect on coho salmon in the Pacific Northwest. So this research and some other emerging research has led the Trash Free Waters program to want to do some scoping research to see if there's a way in which our program might be able to engage with this issue. So we've just started doing some scoping research on this issue, and it's certainly a concerning one.
Yeah, some of those additives to the plastics are pretty nasty. And tomorrow we're going to hear some pretty interesting talks about, I think, endocrine disruptors from microplastics. So yeah, really interesting research there. We just have, we'll take another minute or two on the Save Our Seas legislation. The question was, we've heard Senator Sullivan talking about Save Our Seas 3.0. Does anyone know the status of that?
I can just say that yes, we've heard some inklings about that, but I haven't seen anything. And of course, we'll continue to work closely with Congress on any legislation that could come out.
Great. Let's see. And then somebody was asking, how is the U.S. uniquely positioned to address the global marine debris issue?
I would just say that the U.S. as a top contributor of plastic waste is obligated to lead in solutions. Yeah, so that's how I'm thinking about this issue. It's not really an answer to the question, though.
Yeah. I don't know how.
I think that's
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think Gabby's right. We are a major contributor, and so I think there is, a lot of work that we need to do on our end. I will say, I think Congress was very kind of ahead of the game in establishing the marine debris program back in 2006. So now there are a lot of federal programs within different countries, but even a decade ago, there wasn't necessarily a national program in a lot of countries. So I think we have that experience, but I do think there's a lot of countries that are doing amazing work that we can learn from. But what's really neat is there is this great global community working together. So there is that information sharing, there's that dialogue, there's a lot of very high level discussions about international agreements and the potential for what that could look like. So I think the US is going to be a strong player in all of those conversations.
Well,
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, me too. And I would say that we are a world leader in technology. Maybe that's a little bit self-serving to say that, but we're a world leader in technology, and we could continue that with plastics.
Yeah, great. All right, last one from registration. We've heard some exciting executive order initiatives from the Biden administration to support diversity and inclusion. What is your agency and our program doing to promote justice, equity, inclusion, and diversity? I like to say justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. So it says JEDI, which I think is a great acronym. But with respect to marine debris issues, I think we've touched on this a little bit, but if anybody wants to add anything more before we end out.
I'll just say that, there's a lot going on in EPA as a whole, but for the Trash Free Waters program, we have another ORISE fellow and I have started a literature review to really articulate the intersections between environmental justice and aquatic trash in the Trash Free Waters program. So we're looking at existing research that would help answer the question of, like, are minority or low-income communities disproportionately exposed to or vulnerable to aquatic trash? And I think the kind of research that Ben is working on and described could really help to answer those questions, because there isn't, I mean, we're finding there's just not enough data out there to assess the disproportionate exposure impacts and vulnerability. And then the other area we looked at is are the systems that we have in place to prevent trash from entering waterways, our solid waste management systems. What do we know about the disproportionate impacts that those are having on minority and low-income communities? And there's a lot of literature on that, of course. And then so the result of all this will be some recommendations for our program moving forward.
Great, thanks so much. I actually see one more question in the Q&A. I think we can sneak in from Trey again, Anacostia Riverkeeper. For the whole panel, are there any sources of funding for NGOs to pursue for monitoring microplastics? In particular, looking for sources of funding that might be used to augment existing trash grants to add a microplastics dimension.
Go ahead, Ben.
Okay, just real quick, I can't speak on behalf of DOE, but I have noticed a big uptick in their SBIR grant awardees. The most recent cohort had, I think, 3, if I'm not mistaken, awardees that were specifically looking at waterborne plastics. And they've more than quadrupled their funding towards SBIR in the last few years. So it's definitely a place to look.
Good, thanks.
And I would just add, so, we don't have any specific grants that look specifically at microplastics, generally marine debris, which would encompass microplastics. So, but I think DOE is a great place to look, as well as NSF. NSF is doing a ton of research in this world, and they have some really excellent budgets to put towards things. So I would scout that out too.
Fantastic. Well, I thank you all so very much for your time this afternoon, and I thank all the attendees who have stuck in there till the very bitter end. And but this is only day one, and so we are excited about tomorrow, talking more about microplastics, microfibers, and derelict gear. So tune in for that tomorrow afternoon, 12:30 to 5, same time, same station, and same your same Zoom link that you've been using today works each day. So I think, I'm checking my notes, made sure I said everything, but I think we are good, and we can show the great big thank you slide. And thanks again, Ben, Gabby, and Nancy. We sure appreciate your time, and we hope you all have a lovely evening, and look forward to seeing a lot of you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.